Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone's downstairs. I'm already furious. I've just recorded this video and realized that my microphone wasn't on, so I was being recorded through the echoey microphone that's inside the screen I'm recording from. We're doing it again. We are doing it again. I hope you don't mind doing me some favors. This time it should sound better. Smash the like button for me on the video, only if you enjoy the content. Smash the subscribe on the channel if you haven't already. It's free to do. Join the 19,200 or so Tottenham fans or fans of other football that have gone before. Welcome back to them. Welcome to the new. Hit the notification bell so you can see the content first. And drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. Shout out quickly to the people that left the comments on the previous video, the last video, about the SHEIKH JASSIM takeover. I did something different on that video. There was so much to get through. So there was a lot of slicing and dicing and screenshots of this and that, and I didn't know how it would go down. It wasn't perfect. The editing was pretty rubbish, but the feedback was really positive, so I really appreciate it. Gives me the motivation to do more in-depth stuff in the future. And talking about SHEIKH JASSIM, that whole story might be null and void because this morning, guys, we've got an article. We've got a bunch of articles to get through. We've got to start with this one, and then we're going to get into the transfer news, views, and clues for you, plus some interesting updates on players that are at the club and that have recently left the club, and that there might be money changing hands and things. So stick around. We're going to get through 5 stories as quickly as possible. The first one is from the TBR Football, and they're talking about David Ornstein, who is a guy you listen to when he's talking about Tottenham. He knows his bits and pieces, and he says regarding the SHEIKH JASSIM story that he doesn't believe that Tottenham will be the club that SHEIKH JASSIM moves their attention to, and the family that represent that Qatari money, should they decide to continue their search for footprint into the Premier League. I believe that they will. I believe that I explained in the video one of the major reasons why I think that some of the clubs are being valued twice as much as they probably are on paper is because of the untapped future resource that is caught within the broadcasting deals that could come if the clubs decide to get together with the Premier League and move away from Sky Sports and the traditional broadcasting companies. I think it's a fascinating story that we'll probably be speaking about in the future, the next time that the broadcasting rights deals are negotiated. But in any event, David Ornstein's saying, from people I speak to around the industry, they do not expect that to be Tottenham if they do go again, they being SHEIKH JASSIM and his consortium. Unless things change, and things do change in this industry, I wouldn't put much emphasis on that one. And if you watch that video, for me personally, I'm okay with it. Obviously, there is benefits for having injections of capital into a football club, and a lot of people look at the kind of the limitless wealth that comes from sovereign nations in that kind of Middle Eastern area of the world as saying that it's the golden ticket. It is everything you need to become a competing force. For me, there's downsides to it as much as there are upsides. But if you are looking for pure upside, then as I mentioned on the video, the biggest area in which they can take their limitless wealth and their patience in regarding getting some sort of return on investment is by throwing money into the infrastructure of a football club so that they can then rebuild their stadiums to be able to do what Tottenham already are doing, which is get the extra revenues from the stadiums on non-match days. And if you can find a way to do that brilliantly, then you raise your revenue levels through the stadium and through other non-footballing matters, which then in turn allows you to raise the 70% or 80% currently, but 70% soon, limit of which you can spend on the combination of player wages, transfer fees, and agents fees. Tottenham have already gone down that path. Other teams haven't. And so there's a limit to how much value at the moment someone like SHEIKH JASSIM could bring into Tottenham. They can't just throw £1 billion willy-nilly at football players without falling foul of FFP. Obviously, you can look at Chelsea and there's ways to kind of kick that can down the road, but ultimately you are still limited as a bottleneck by the revenues that you bring in. And for a club like Tottenham, they can't necessarily just go about the easiest method, the path of least resistance to do that. They can still find value by bringing in the money to go after youth team players and absorb all of the best young talent around and sell them on to improve your player trading, balance sheet, and also multi-club ownership. There's still lots of benefits, but for me, for someone like them, they're going to look to have an immediate impact that is tangible and palpable, and they'll probably look for a club that would really benefit from an infrastructure investment. And I don't think that Tottenham is that club. Everton would make a lot of sense. although they've just apparently got new owners in 777 Partners, which I'll do a video about them. I've done one before about them. They're a very interesting outfit. Liverpool obviously could do with the new stadium. West Ham are borrowing and renting a stadium that's, you know, not a particularly great experience. You know, Fulham, it would cost a lot of money to regenerate that particular area of London, but there's options there. Crystal Palace as well. I mean, good football club, terrible stadium. So maybe, just maybe, there's other clubs that will be of higher interest to Sheikh Jassim. And that does worry me, that you're going to have a team that currently sits lower than us in the pecking order on paper that will suddenly be competing at the highest table. So it is what it is, though. But according to Ornstein, Sheikh Jassim is not going to be buying Tottenham. As I say, not that bothered. Let's move on, guys, to the next story, which starts with the transfer news, views, and clues now. And this is Johan Lange, the new guy who's coming in as director of football. I realize now I've been saying his name wrong. It's not Lange, it's Lange. People from Scandinavia have told me you pronounce it with that G rather than a J on the end. And this story is from the Telegraph. It's behind the paywall, so I'm just going to use HITC's version of it. But the Telegraph are claiming that Lange is a big fan of Manchester City midfielder KALVIN Phillips. Tottenham have raided Aston Villa for Lange, making the Dane their new technical director moving forward. Lange will arrive in North London on November the 1st, but rumours about who he could target for Tottenham are already emerging. And there's lots of rumours. A lot of them are stories that have been around for a while. I personally have spoken about KALVIN Phillips. I think about a week ago, I did a video on him and Conor Gallagher. You guys were generally overwhelmingly against both of the deals in the video. Listen, you said no to Conor Gallagher because you said generally that he was Chelsea through and through and the Chelsea captain and that it wouldn't happen. And whilst that, I completely agree with that. When I'm just hypothesizing on transfer rumours, it's more around whether the player would fit the system more so than if the player would want to join Tottenham in the first place. But it's a relevant point. I personally think that Conor Gallagher would have fit because of his ability to increase the quality of the bench or the squad depth. But you haven't got to juggle the concern around giving him minutes so much because he can play in 3 different positions, the 6, the first 8, or the second 8/10, whatever you want to call it. So, but anyway, that doesn't look like that's happening. But this particular story, KALVIN Phillips has got a little bit more legs again today. It's the first I've seen the Telegraph reporting on the story. And to me, I really like KALVIN Phillips. You guys, most of you said you didn't like him. I really do. I remember him when he played for Leeds as a youngster and he was sitting in that 6, playing the quarterback role, coming back, mopping everything up in front of the back 4, and then whipping these delicious low-driven balls into the channels for their wing forwards or their more advanced midfielders to pick up. I think he's got a delicious pass. I think he's a pit bull of a player, a bit of a terrier, and he can obviously affect the press very well where he would be played. I think that he would come in and play in the 6, compete with Bissouma. Bissouma would probably have the edge for sure, but Bissouma, of course, can play in the 8 if necessary, so there's no reason why you couldn't see both of them on the pitch if there were injuries elsewhere. I don't see really KALVIN Phillips playing anywhere else other than that kind of 6 role. And I think that he would get the minutes. I do think he'd get the minutes because I think that you've got, at least in the immediate future, you have Bissouma going away on international duty for most of January. You know that he's got an injury or 2 in his track record, and so that might be an issue. In seasons to come, you're going to be playing hopefully 2 games a week, so you're going to need to have that ability to rotate. But on top of that, I think there's always going to be suspensions to the person who plays in the 6 because of the way we play. Sometimes the 6 has to play the sacrificial lamb from a disciplinary perspective and pick up, cheap yellow cards to break down the moves when the transitions from the opposition happening too fast and we're at threat of conceding a goal. So I personally really do think he would fit the team, fit the system. I think he's a real workhorse as well, and he's of higher caliber value than in the specificities of what we need in this particular system than someone like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who, according to reports, does seemingly look increasingly likely to leave. So I'm all for it, but I know you guys aren't. So we will move on. I do also think, of course, that I don't think he'll cost £45 million, which is what City paid Leeds for him. He does come with the English tax. It's nice to have homegrown players. The other, I guess, elephant in the room is, does Pep Guardiola want to deal with Tottenham? Every time Pep speaks about Tottenham, he talks about Daniel Levy, and usually not in very nice terms. Obviously, doesn't have much respect for him because of the Harry Kane saga. So that might be an issue. But there were reports out yesterday saying that because of Johan Lange's appointment and the fact that Paratici's still on the payroll, plus you've got Scott Munn coming in now, maybe even a couple others coming in as well in the near future, that there is an increased likelihood that Daniel Levy is going to step away from doing the frontline negotiations. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't believe that. I think that he loves the negotiation. He loves the art of the deal and wants to be involved as much as possible. But maybe there is truth to this idea that he's got other distractions now, trying to bring over an NFL franchise. You know, wants to be like Ari Gold from Entourage. You know, and maybe he's just got too many things that he wants to do from a commercial point of view with Todd Klein, etc. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I still don't think it will be likely that Phillips will join Tottenham, but I'm a big fan of his, as is Lange apparently. And so I'd be very happy if we could bring him in for decent money in January. Let's move on to the next story. This is out of Team Talk, but it's from 90minutes.com, which is the topper end of the higher end of the kind of mid-tier rumour mills. And they're talking about Fulham are stunning Tottenham with a January bid for the defender Victor Nelson. Victor Nelson, we spoke about ad nauseum in the summer. He's a player that, for me, for Galatasaray, he's got one outstanding attribute. I mentioned it 100 times on the Y-Scout tool. When you're looking at department of players' qualities and you look at things like long balls accuracy, I've never seen a player of any caliber where you have to go down to like the 25th most recent chronologically ordered attempt at a long pass to find one that didn't go where it was intended to go. He's incredible at pinging balls, you know, like Toby Alderweireld used to do. Is that necessary? As necessary in the Ange system? I'm not sure. He does have mistakes in him, but he's better than Eric Dyer, better than sort of Ben Davies. He is a step up, and we have 2 or 3 young centre backs coming through. So do we really need to go massive and get a real top tier centre back in? I'm not sure we can offer them at the moment the compelling reason to come and disrupt the current back four that we have. I think it's about getting through, to January. And a player like him, a player like Tosin Adarabioyo, someone of that caliber, Lloyd Kelly, another player we've constantly mentioned and linked with, is probably that level that is below what we have, but not as low as Eric Dyer or the drop-off to the unknown entities that in our youth system. And I'm kind of okay with that kind of leveling up in a periodic fashion. The story does go on, though, to say that Spurs are actually looking to potentially raid Galatasaray for as many as 3 players. We spoke about the first one, Kerem Aktürkoğlu, who is a left winger for Galatasaray, a really interesting player. We spoke about him last week. He's very tricky, got some great statistics. I wouldn't say he's blessed with pace. I did mention that before. I said he's not blessed with pace, and people said that I was saying he's slow. He's not slow. He's fine, but he's just not like a Brennan Johnson type of tricky winger that can beat a man, and once you get up to full speed, no one's catching you. For me, he's more stocky and sturdy, but can kind of bounce through players rather than dance around them. Still a very viable winger option, and I think that this might be a story that has come from the data science model, that maybe this name has popped up because Johan Lange is doing his data work, and this name has cropped up through the data as being a top candidate to put on the shortlist for a new winger. We do need a winger. They started the season with more depth in that particular position than anywhere else on the pitch, but because of injuries, it's kind of fallen away. We know that Ivan Perisic is probably leaving the club in January, even though he's going to go. He's going to leave us injured. He probably won't be playing for Tottenham anymore. We know that Manuel Solomon is out for a long-term injury as well. Brennan Johnson, we don't know what he's going to recover like from his hamstring injury. And so Tottenham do have, and Brian Hill as well might be leaving the club. Sorry, I forgot to mention. That's another name that is constantly linked with an exit in January. So we are going to need to refresh in that position to get us through till the end of the season. It's such an important area of the pitch, and Kerem Aktürkoğlu is one of those options. There's lots of other options out there, which we'll be talking about in the coming days and weeks. The other name that has been mentioned, though, is a new one that hasn't been mentioned with Tottenham before, and that's Sacha Boey. He plays a right back for Galatasaray, a very, very interesting right back. Looks and reminds me a little bit of Trent Alexander-Arnold. Going forward, he's brilliant. He's got good pace, balance, is a wonderful dribbler, can sort of glide past players with his soft depth of touch, and has got a brilliant, brilliant right foot on him. His crosses with his right foot are delectable, always get put into the danger zone, the danger area, and is a player that I personally like. However, defensively, I don't think he's as good going back as he is going forward. We had those issues with in our forefront of our mind with Pedro Porro. I think this particular player is more balanced in his abilities to go forward and go back. But I don't really understand the rationale for a right back, if I'm entirely honest. Maybe at the start of the season, we were all thinking, you know, are either of the ones we've got good enough? But I think both of them have stepped up this year and proven that they want to get better, they want to improve, they want to learn the new role. And Pedro Porro has been, for me, arguably the third best player at Tottenham Hotspur this season. I think he's been absolutely sensational at coming in and playing that kind of third 8 role, whatever you want to call it, second 6 when he's in the inverted fullback role. But he gets forward, his timing of weight of passing is brilliant. And, you know, he's got a couple of goals in him. And then behind him, you've got Emerson Royale, who, again, offers something different. But when has been asked and called upon, hasn't made any mistakes. And I think that he is a good enough player to hang around for where we are in our project. So I just don't see us really going after a right back. I would imagine that that particular link is probably just a little bit of laziness. People saying, well, there's a link between Tottenham and Galatasaray because of the Sanchez deal and the Ndombele deal and the Victor Nelson links. And let's just, anyone that's good at Galatasaray, let's link them to Tottenham. I don't personally see it, but you know what? Been wrong before. I've been wrong again. So that is the stories with regards with regards Galatasaray. Another link here from Football Fancast regarding Jota, another winger, and the story is the same as it has been. So I'm not going to talk any more about that. There's nothing really new there. Where I do want to move to is a little bit about some of the players that we've got at the club or we've had at the club and some kind of financial implications. It's an interesting report from The Bild in Germany via Sports Witness that claim that if Tottenham finish in the Champions League spots this season, then we will owe Wolfsburg a further 10 million euros, 8.6 million pound, if they qualify for the Champions League. And that we paid them an initial 34 million pound. It was interesting. No one was really sure what the initial fee was and what those kind of add-ons looked like. But if we do finish in the Champions League, and that's obviously where everyone, I think, realistically hopes that we can achieve for this season, then another 8.5 million pound will have to leave Tottenham's precious transfer budget to go to Wolfsburg. It is what it is, and it's a fee that I think I'll be very happy to pay, because naturally, if you do finish in the Champions League spots, you're probably going to make about 50, 60 million quid just in additional revenues from the TV money, from the sponsorships, and hopefully from some campaign prize money. If you do well in the group stages, the numbers grow up from there. And so it's well earned. He's been a brilliant player for Tottenham Hotspur this season. He's lit up the Premier League with his pace and his sublime timing of his tackling. And look, you know, if it ends up costing us 45 million quid rather than, 42 million quid rather than 34, then it's not going to be too much of an issue for me, especially if this last story I want to bring to you comes true as well. And that is all about Sunderland star, ex-Tottenham player, Jack Clarke. And then the list of names that are linked to Jack Clarke is never ending. You've got Crystal Palace and Brighton have joined Burnley, and 3 other Premier League clubs are looking to land Sunderland winger Jack Clarke. But it is Tottenham who could prove to be the big winners. Jack Clarke has emerged as one of the best players in the Championship in the last 12 months, firing Sunderland into the Championship top 6 last season. He joined them he was on a loan from Tottenham originally, guys. Then he joined on a full-term deal. And Tottenham have got, according to this, we've got a cut of the future sale. It's not been disclosed how much, but it could reportedly be as high as 50%, meaning any transfer for the player would go some distance towards limiting Tottenham's losses on the 10 million they paid Leeds for the winger back in the summer of 2019. And Sunderland reportedly valued Jack Clarke at around 20 million pound mark, with his Premier League suitors ready to open the bidding at 15 million. The other names are supposed to be Brentford, Wolves and Bournemouth that are also watching him as well. So it's a really interesting one. I mean, I think that everyone's forgotten all about Jack Clarke, a player that obviously we were right in thinking that he was a precocious talent and is starting to prove it now. But some people are just late bloomers. He's still only 22, but it never worked out for Tottenham. But hopefully, we can get that money back, and that money will either pay off the debt that we have or pay off the losses we have on him in the first place, or could go some way to paying off the additional 8.5 million pound that we are likely to owe Wolfsburg for Mickey van der Ven. And this 50% sell-on fee thing, for me, is such an important and integral part of how teams like Manchester City and Chelsea continue to create the revenue streams available and have those FFP accounting practices that kick the can down the road so that they can continue to spend money above and beyond where they would usually be able to spend through acquisition of these highly talented youth players, that then if they don't fit the bill at the club that they're bought for, they can be loaned out and eventually sold on for some money at the time with 50% or 40% sell-on fees. We did something similar with Marcus Edwards. Of course, that guy has really figured itself out and is doing brilliant things over in Portugal. But I think we actually had to write off some of that 50% sell-on fee in order to convince the sporting chairman to allow Pedro Porro to come over. Anyway, that's about it from me, guys. Nothing else to talk about apart from some injury updates. The main ones are Heung-min Son and Romero, both of whom looked injured after their international games. Romero did come off. He said his ankle was swollen too much to continue to play. Plus, he has one eye on the Fulham game on Monday, which is a big game for Tottenham, which is nice to see. It's nice to see that he's saying he's giving some sort of priority to his club. It's great, and more of that, please. And it was nice that the Argentinian coach did the right thing. Same can't be said, though, for Jurgen Klinsmann at Korea. Sonny was 5-0 up in a friendly, and it was 66 minutes gone, and Sonny's pain was visible all over his face, and yet Jurgen Klinsmann left him on for the full 90 minutes. I don't know if that's pressure from sponsors to keep him on because he is the golden boy of Korean football, or if it was just selfishness, or if it's Sonny himself that's saying he's fine. You know, remember last season, according to himself, he himself played the entire year injured, and only at the end of the season said he had a hernia. And that, to me, whilst I love and appreciate the desperate willingness to be on the pitch, sometimes players need to be saved from themselves, because it's not only dangerous for the player to turn what could be a relatively insignificant injury that could be fixed with a little bit of gentle care at the start of a problem, that could then turn into something far more aggressive and powerfully significant if you leave it and irritate it by continuing to play when you shouldn't be. But on top of that, from a kind of a selfish perspective, you might believe that the 60% version of yourself is better than the 100% version of the person who's chomping at the bit to come in and play. But that's not necessarily in the best interest of Tottenham Hotspur. I'm not saying that's the case here, but I do believe that, you know, Tottenham Hotspur have had to been forced to withdraw Sonny for the last 3 or 4 games, and for Jurgen Klinsmann to make him play 100 minutes whilst he's clearly visibly in pain, I think there's an issue there. And I think that he should be forced to have some scans. Even if he is asked when he returns, are you okay? And he says, yes, I am. I think that he should have some scans for the medical team to be certain of that in their own hearts and minds, because, you know, sometimes players say they're fine when they're not, and it can lead to bigger complications and not be in the best interest of the football club. I hope that's not the case. I hope he is fine, but I don't know. It's like 4th time in a row now we've seen him wincing in agony during the second half of a football match. Not good. Not good. Let me know your thoughts, guys, everything I said. Like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you on the next one. And as always, bye-bye.